Viewers, welcome once again to Hotline with Ann Dookie on IETV and iRadioTT.com. Today, we are about to discuss and demonstrate to the public, to put it colloquially, how level the playing field is. The procurement process. What does it mean for local versus foreign contractors? You're all familiar with the OFF report. It made a lot of headlines in the media, and maybe some of the recommendations made by that commission of inquiry, but how much of it are implemented and how much is ignored, how much is pushed under the table? Let's welcome Dr. Don Samuel. Dr. Samuel, welcome to Hotline, and thank you for joining us in this discussion today.
Hi, good afternoon, Ann. Good afternoon to the IETV viewing audience with home and abroad. Glad to be here.
Dr. Samuel, I didn't get that. The volume is low, perhaps. Technical crew needs to raise the volume, yes. Could you repeat what you said? Thank you.
Oh, great. So, good afternoon, Ann. Good afternoon to the IETV audience, both home and abroad. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Dr. Kick off things, the Trinidad and Tobago Transparency Institute. They look forward to full implementation of the recommendations made in the OFF reports as promised by both past and present administrations. All in their elections manifesto have promised this. To your knowledge, has any of this been fulfilled? Where do we stand today?
Well, that is an excellent question, Ann. There are 90 recommendations of the OFF report. And we actually recently discussed that, a panel of Mr. Derek, Mr. Adi Surajnath, who was on your program last time.
Yes.
We discussed this at the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute seminar last week. And I think there's a fair amount of debate that whether it's this government or the last government, that a lot still needs to be done. In fairness to any government that has gone in the past, there have been some items that have been implemented, and we could discuss this, but most of the items on the list still need some treatment. So I think that the question is why? Why are we still? This report was prepared in 2010, and we are in 2023, 13 years after.
Quite why correct, yes.
Yeah. Why are we still here discussing that some of these recommendations have not been done? And I think going forward, we need to, if we want a better country, we want value for money and we want transparency by Transparency Institute and also by various stakeholders in the construction sector, including the Contractors Association as part of the JCC, then we need to know why it is these recommendations still have yet to be dealt with in a more serious manner. So we could go forward on that.
Of course, Doc, the way the government does business, how its expenditure is managed and controlled, as a result, reduce the opportunity for corruption. That has been crippling our development. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, over the years, we've seen allegations of, and I say allegations, we have been very careful and respectful of the government's position, but we've been hearing about allegations of corruption. And it's always a political football. Well, one side would say the other side did it, and then when the tables turn, there's a switcheroo, as we say. So the issue is, have we proven the allegations using data, and we've done it in the courts? We don't know. Again, there have been very serious allegations with respect to theft, nepotism, corruption, award of contracts unfairly. And so we need to investigate. And that's the purpose of the Office of the Procurement Regulator. However, the Office of the Procurement Regulator is now facing two challenges, and I said this in a radio program, I think it was 2 weeks ago. One, since January, the former regulator, he was not renewed. And I am not sure whether there is a regulator operating in the country right now. Because if you go to the Office of the Procurement Regulator website, you do see the statement. They say to be appointed. The second thing, of course, is the one which has been the hot debate for quite some time, which is the proclamation of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act. And we now have a new president, and I hope it's high on the agenda to proclaim. But if you follow the newsreels in the last several months, there were challenges. The General did say there were challenges from the judiciary side. That's a fair challenge. But the other challenge with the proclamation that has resulted in great debate is Section 7, right? When Section 7 talks about, and let me just quote from it directly.
Sure.
Verse 5 amends Section 7 of the Act by saying there's a new subsection which provides that the Act shall not apply, let me repeat that, to public bodies or state-controlled entities that provide legal services, financial services, accounting and auditing, medical services, or such other services as the minister may by order determine. Now, this is found in the Bill Essentials, which you could find, you could download for yourself on the Tobago Parliament website. That last line worries me. Well, in fact, all the lines worry me, but that last line particularly, such other services as the minister may by order determine. So if it's saying that the minister has a choice, and they don't say which minister, I am assuming it's the Minister of Finance, if the minister has a choice to say, here's what, this particular contract will not be under the scrutiny of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property Act, then what is the people left to conclude? Are they going to conclude that, wait, no, we're not going to scrutinize this. It's not going to be passing through the Office of the Procurement Regulator. And this is going to be this could be subject to corruption and so on. And the Office of the Procurement Regulator did raise this issue in one of their notices, I think it was somewhere in November or December. They raised this as an issue, they flagged it. And I haven't heard anyone in the public sphere, minister or anyone else say, hey, we need to discuss this. But it is a serious statement. So you have those two challenges for the Office of the Procurement Regulator, the absence of a regulator at this point in time, unless the interview process is going on, I'm not sure. And the second part is that this particular clause. So that does affect us here in the construction industry. So I'll just, there's more to say what I say, but I will allow for your next
questions. Yes, a very important question, Dr. Samuel, and I will mention 3 reports here as I go along. Shouldn't these reports be made readily available to the public, to the national community, whose taxpayers' funding are used to host these commissions? You have, in the airport project, you have the Bernard report. We all would remember the report of the collapse of the Caroni Bridge and the Beach High School. We would never forget that. Shouldn't these reports be made public, whose taxpayers' dollars are funding these reports?
Well, forgive me, Ann, I actually thought that the reports were public because the off report, as it is fondly called, it is available for download. Anyone can go to the Tobago Parliament website and get that report. I thought those other reports were public. And these are quite lengthy reports. So one of the things I think we need to do in Commission of Inquiries is that we have a whole discussion in the summary of these reports, stating what was wrong, what we found, that kind of thing. But there needs to be a simplification somewhere for public consumption, so that the public doesn't get the wrong impression of the conclusions of the report. I mean, if you read 91 recommendations of the off report, it's pretty simple reading. But those of us who in the industry, we would understand, specifically what is going on.
You would understand the terminology, what I'm saying.
You would understand it quite right.
It is not readily available. It is not easily available to the man on the streets out there.
Quite right. So I mean, because at the end of the day, we all should be paying taxes. So, and the man in the public or the man/woman in the public, they pay taxes as well. So
of course.
I think it is quite important for the public to understand the purpose of these commissions, why they were undertaken, but not only that, what are the energetic and active resolutions coming out of the report? Because then if we don't follow up on the resolutions of the report, then it's just a report, it's just sitting on there. as a pile of paper to put it in.
Just pages on the shelves.
Correct. Correct.
The Joint Consultative Council, Doc, do they make things more complicated?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
The JCC, yes. The Joint Consultative Council, do they make things easier or more complicated? Why is the industry not advocating for better?
Well, I'll tell you this, sir. I have read with great interest Fazil Khan, and with the greatest respect for him.
Yes, I know, Mr. Khan.
He has tried. He has tried in the various mechanisms, press releases, and so on. What I am not seeing is what appears to be any reaction from the government when he speaks on behalf of the JCC, because the JCC is an umbrella organization. We have APET, TTIA, and so on underneath them. And the question is, why is the government not taking on the JCC? I mean, in previous years, I remember when Afra Raymond was head of JCC and he was energetically calling for different things. I remember the government used to engage him. I mean, they may not have agreed with him on certain things or vice versa, but they engaged. What I am seeing now is the lack of engagement. And to me, that boils down to also a lack of respect, because it means that your construction industry is the second largest industry next to the energy industry, okay?
Yes.
And a lot of money is spent there. It's the area where any government would say, here's what I have done, so and so, and you should vote for me. And I have no issue with that. But now, you need to engage your stakeholders. I mean, that is just project management 101, engaging your stakeholders. So I think the government needs to engage us. That is the construction industry, the contractors association, what have you, and have something meaningful dialogue, because there are issues in the industry. I mean, the off report talks about the construction procurement, which is my specialization, but there are other things happening in the industry which affect the whole industry, and these things need to be engaged. So I just don't think that the GCC is getting the greatest of respect, and they should. And I think the entire industry should stand behind them. And it shouldn't be just people making calls in silos. Like, for example, I'm one of those. I make a call in a silo. I do it by myself. Fazil does it by himself. I think the entire industry should come together and make the unified call to deal with issues in the construction industry. Because the construction industry affects our physical development. It's everything on the construction industry. And there are a lot of satellite industries that come out of the construction industry. So it's a very important sector.
Yes, it is the second largest sector, as you rightfully said. Doc, you also rightfully said that if you start wrong, you will end wrong, right?
Yes, I hope so. Right.
Yes, I was listening to you earlier. And why sabotage these contracts, the condition of contracts, if they are not in the correct place?
So, I didn't hear the first part, sorry, Ann.
I said, if you start wrong, you will end wrong, as you rightfully said. Right. When clauses are asked to be taken out of contracts. Right? Yes. The conditions of contracts. Why is it not advocated or put in the correct place to begin with?
Quite right. I know exactly what you're talking about. Now, conditions of contract are appended to your main contract. So, first of all, you need to figure out what your main contract is. Sometimes you do the FIDIC here and different forms of FIDIC. There's a new engineering contract. There was some debate in our seminar with the CCGI that we should have a standard form of contract with Trinidad and Tobago. But then what you append to that is conditions of contract. And if you are removing conditions of contract, as I said before, you start wrong, you're going to end wrong.
Yes.
The question is why? And I'll tell you something. You don't need to have a PhD or a master's or a bachelor's degree to understand this. It is simple. If you are removing a clause of a contract which is intended to have transparency, more effective value for money, and to ensure that there's no corruption, and you remove this clause, then what are you doing? You are enabling corruption. It's simple as that. And these are the kind of persons we need to get out of the system, because they do affect the way things happen in the system. We need to have, it goes back to your moral and ethical sense. And I said that. I said you could have the greatest of procurement policies in an organization or in the country. You can have your procurement legislation, but it boils down to personal ethics. You don't have personal ethics, you are going to do the wrong thing, and you're going to find a way to beat a system designed to be beaten.
Do we have too much hierarchy present that holds back this process?
And also, I think the hierarchy is important, but I think the issue here now is where are the checks and the balances? Okay, so if it is that you prepared a contract, you sent it out, and it is erroneous, then it's going to end erroneous. I've said this before in previous programs where I remember speaking to a young engineer, and she is saying that she's been told, she works in a regional court, been told to take out this clause because for some reason or the other, and she says no, this is what I've been trained to do. I've been trained to ensure that this clause remains in the contract for value for money. She says the particular firm says, no, he doesn't want it in. But then she becomes a little bit suspicious and she says, why don't you want it in? And then what comes after? A threat. And this is the problem. Our young people, and I've said this before, especially in the industry, are quite frustrated having to deal with some older persons to them, here, well, take out a clause of contract, do something wrong. And I am here to stand up for them. We need to ensure that that this kind of thing doesn't happen and we don't sabotage our own contracts, because then it makes no sense. We are basically really endangering our contracts and having our own self-abuse in place.
Just this morning, I was looking at a contract across in Guyana and how detailed their contracts are to prevent this process.
Well, so you're looking at a contract?
Yeah, someone sent it to me, another engineer, yes, and I was looking at it, and how detailed the contract is to avoid these things, and this is what needs to be implicated here in Trinidad and Tobago and implemented.
Well, I would say this, when I started my career and moving on up during the career cycle, I participated in what we call robust contracts, right? And even where I work now, we do robust contracting. We ensure that there's value. If in other organizations in Trinidad we're not doing it, the question is why. And I think, to be fair to state organizations, I think a greater percentage every time they do have effective contracting. But the question is, you have an effective contract, and what I have been told is now you are simply ignoring carrying out the particular clause in the contract that gives rise to an effective contract. And is it that you are ignoring the contract because you have been threatened, because some persons have reported that, or you live in fear that if you do carry it out, your job will be threatened? So some persons have reported that to me. This is the question. We need to carry out the contract as it is. And I think it's maybe a little bit unfair to say that most organizations don't have effective contracts. I think most of these big state organizations and so on, they have effective state contracts. But we need to carry out all the conditions. And we need to hold contractors accountable for value for money. Now, when you look at the failure of some of the roads and so on, I question it not from the quality standpoint only, but what did the contract say? I don't know. So it could be that the contractor has erred, and if the contractor has erred, what has the engineer or the client said to the contractor, hey, if you have not done it properly, you need to fix it at your own cost. I do that all the time. And sometimes contractors will be quite angry at me because I tell them, listen, I'm not going to accept poor quality on my projects. And they do become quite enraged with it. But then when they put down, they realize it's what, it's a contract and they need to fix it, right? I once, just a story, right? I once was doing a sidewalk project and concrete wasn't done properly. And I told the contractor, hey, now you need to do the money. And he said, no, he's not going to do it. And I said, okay, well, you're not going to get paid. Huh. And then that was the battle going on. And they tried all kind of things. They went to my boss, normal behavior. And at the end, he had to do it over. And he had to pass the quality test. So if we take the position, and it's not always the contractors. I want to be fair to the contractors. It's not always the contractors' problem. It could be that it was a poor design. And the way to beat that is to have design reviews. When I used to work at Trinidad Plan, and I could see that open, we used to have design reviews all the time. So someone will review a design and ensure it is consistent, it does what it is effective. And we will review others' designs as well. I don't see that anymore. So we have design reviews, but we also need to scope the thing properly, ensure we get value for money. Take the roads, for example. Why are we paving over a road when the problem is not the road or the potholes? It could be that there's a land slippage or a drainage issue we need to fix first, rather than pay for the road first. So,
In this country, clearly you could see they fix from the top go down. They don't do it the other. It's not the other way around.
Exactly. We need to do root cause analysis to investigate why some of these things are continuing to fail despite spending money on them. And I've talked about that, I mean, we haven't touched on the off report here, but I've talked about that in many of his recommendations.
We will come back after the short commercial break, Doc, and I want you to tell our listening public out there what is the off report and some of the recommendations in it for those who don't know. We'll be right back after this short commercial break. Hello, join me on Hotline with Ann Dookie every Monday at 1 to 2 p.m. The thing with this coronavirus is we had to push away the ones we love the most. We had to watch our families dwindle. We have seen infection rates rising. People are reluctant to get vaccinated. But wait, this is where the doctors come in. Then we had to face rising food prices every day. Most of you will agree we have been challenged. It's time we make the policies to set the agenda. Join me on Hotline with Ann Dookie, Mondays from 1 to 2 p.m. live on IETV and iRadioTT.com. See you there. Welcome back, viewers and listeners, both on iRadioTT.com and IETV, and to those listening online. Doctor, welcome back. Yes, before we went to the break, I mentioned some people don't know what is the off report and how it impacts us, and what is the out of the box approach. I heard you were speaking about the off report last week when you discussed this issue. Enlighten our viewers and listeners. What is the off report?
All right. So the off report was inquiry into the constructions rising out of, again, allegations of impropriety and mismanagement of funds prior to 2010. So it examined the entire construction sector as a whole, looked at the root cause of the issues, and then it made recommendations. But it also examined particular contract. I don't want to really repeat it here. I mean, one can read it. Also looked at the operations of our biggest expenditure organizations like UDCOT, Ministry of Books, and so on. So I think out of that report, there were 91 recommendations. And of course, there's a lot to go through here. So I think what I would touch on is some of the recommendations seem to be on the burner. And the first, and the actual one I'm going to touch is the actual first one. So the first one said, money assigned for public construction projects must not be allowed to be corruptly diverted and therefore stolen from the public. And that is actually such a powerful statement. But then when I look at the fact that Section 7 was amended, not to apply to, so that the act would not apply to specific bodies or as determined by the minister, to me that clause in the current act opposes that recommendation, the one I just read. Right? There's another one, recommendation 2. Management roles should be performed only by experienced persons who should be motivated to take positive and proactive decisions and to take initiative when the project so demands. And when I look at, over the years, at some of the allegations being made, there were members of boards who appeared not to be qualified. There were members in the management structure who were hired to manage these projects, but they were not qualified or experienced. And therefore, if you don't have the right decision, and this is another like makes it good, right? If you don't have the right people making the right decisions at the right time, you're going to have the wrong results. So you need to have the correct people qualified, and I've made a call for that on many occasions. I mean, what is more concerning is that in May 2022, the Integrity Commission indicated that 1,350 ex parte applications were made to the High Court for persons who did not file declarations. How can we have persons sitting on boards do not file their declarations for one reason or the other, and then it forces the Integrity Commission to go to court to force them to do it, right? If we have the right people on on the boards making the right decisions at the right time, then of course the potential for corruption and so on will reduce. So this is in violation of recommendation number 2. All right. I one with some others. There was one that said, this is one. Good project management includes monitoring all project activities, taking action proactively to avoid foreseeable delay, identifying and resolving design errors, controlling the timing of unavoidable variations, and appropriate freezing the design. Sorry, when appropriate freezing design. Project managers who fail to perform adequately must be held to account. And therefore, this is exactly what I'm talking about. If it is gross negligence, I'm not talking about a project manager making an error. As project managers, we all make errors at times, and we need to take responsibility for them. But if it's gross negligence, where that it is proved that this particular construction / project manager, in whether the client side, the engineer side, or the contractor side, is continually not doing what is in accordance with the contract, then action needs to be taken, because this affects your project. I always say project management is the management of people. So this is the point that is made in recommendation number 4. All right. Shall I go on?
Yeah, go on. Some people do not know what recommendations were made.
So there's recommendation number 8. Value for money requires that projects should be performed efficiently by all parties in accordance with their contractual duties and with due professional skill. Now, there's this great debate in the country that value for money means the lowest price. And I've heard people say that, the minister said, hey, we awarded the contract at the lowest price. I'm not advocating that we awarded at the highest price, but there's a construction comment, and the acronym is MEET, M-E-A-T, most economically advantageous tender. And what it says is that we need to award the contract to the price that gives you value for money. Now, what is that? Value for money means that over the life cycle of the project, because a project has life cycles, a highway may have 50 years, a building may have 50 years. Over the life cycle, we want to ensure that the maintenance and operating costs are minimal. So you spend the money upfront to ensure you get a good product, and then your spend on maintenance should be less. And this is no different than how you maintain your car. You try to buy a car which is within your budget and which will give you the best value for money, and of course you don't want to have high expenditure on maintenance. So it's the same concept. And I mean, we didn't need off to tell us that, but I mean, it's in the report as item number 8. All right. Let me get another one. Number 11. Local contractors and consultants must be prepared to adopt a flexible approach to acquiring new expertise and skills with a view to delivering value from whatever procurement method the client may choose. Okay, so this really has to talk about what we like to call adversarial contracts in the country. Our contracts have been adversarial, where you have different parties fighting in the contract. And this have led to disputes and people going to court and so on. The Attorney General did mention that the judiciary doesn't have the resources to deal with some of these cases. And so one of these things I know they were talking about was a specialist court. And my good friend Mr. Oakridge also advocated for that. To have a specialist court in which it deal with construction disputes, because these things tend to go on for quite some time. And if you're running it through the regular court system, you may have other cases and the prioritization of cases in the court system. So what we need to have in the country is more incentivized, flexible contract. Okay, we need to have contracts that apportion the risk not only to the contractor, but apportion it fairly, because clients tend to apportion risk only to the contractor, but they run the contract. So obviously it will apportion back to them. So you need to apportion the risk properly. So we need to have a more collaborative risk-sharing contract with some incentives. So for example, if you finish the contract early and it was done within the best quality and within the contractual obligations, then you could pay an incentive. And in so doing, by motivating the contractor to finish early and an incentivized contract, then you will have better value for money. So that was one of the recommendations of which I'm not seeing. One of the recommendations from OFDO, I think the only one that would have, I'm looking for it now, where he would have spoken about setting up the office of the procurement regulator. So I think that was one of the items that obviously has been done. But now, as I said before, earlier in this program, We don't have a regulator at this point in time.
That was actually one of my questions, whether or not we have a procurement legislator.
Yeah, so they call him regulator in the yeah. And in January, I know Mr. Lalton was there, and then he's not there right now. And if you go to the website, and I said this earlier in the program, you will see on the text there, you will see that to be appointed. Now, my question is, one, what is happening in the meantime while the regulator is not there? Because that's January, we are now in April.
That makes dispute resolution, Doc, does that make dispute resolution difficult then in Trinidad and Tobago?
If dispute resolution is difficult?
Yeah. If we don't have a regulator.
Well, okay, so this is how disputes go. In the contract, there is a dispute, well, in the contracts, I would say. There's a dispute adjudication board. So it is the parties agree the contract, that is the client, the engineer, and the contractor agree that if there's a dispute, it will refer to this DAB called dispute adjudication board. It's not a state regulatory board, it's just an agreement that they will go to someone who is of repute. Now, in this case, they normally go to the president of APET as one member of that board, or the president of the Contractor Association, and they help sort out the dispute. If, of course, the dispute cannot be sorted out at that level, they're supposed to go to arbitration, all right? And we do have an arbitration act which was discussed last week that it is outdated. So the issue is now when the arbitration doesn't work, then it gets into the courts. And once it gets in the courts, you see the disputes going on for years and years, and the project might be temporarily halted, and you know, there's a lot of money being spent for legal fees and so on. So the question is, if your question was if the regulator is not there, whether disputes could be resolved. It could be resolved depending on the nature of the dispute. But the regulator needs to be there. It's part of the procurement legislation, which again has not been proclaimed. I'm hoping our new president does proclaim it, and then we could get going. But I'm not seeing any energy towards that at this point in time.
When I started the program, I talk about leveling the playing field in the off report. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it's number 42. The recommendation to have a proper measure in place for equity to level the playing field?
Yeah, so let me read out 42. The government's policy on the use of foreign contractors and consultants for public construction projects should be transparent and open to review. Right, so I'll tell you what my position is on this. I've always said in every program that we have good qualified contractors, consultants in the country. And there's no need to bring foreign contractors and consultants unless that particular expertise is not there. So when I look at what office is saying in item 42 about leveling the playing field, that is probably what he's referring to. But there's another contention. Now, there is, I read respect on an article a few weeks back. There's a particular contractor that tendered for work and was felt that this contractor didn't have the expertise. Now, in leveling the playing field, what we should do is grow our contractors, because we have small contractors who obviously want to become medium and enlarged, but they need to be. So in other words, we don't give them let's say a $45 million project to do when they're resourcing internally or their experience cannot handle it. We give them a $1 million contract to do, and then we grow them. So that is the problem. Obviously, we know the contractors in the field, and we all know who they are, and they will handle the bigger contracts. But they grew from a point of where they were small, then went through medium, and then went large. They didn't just become large just so overnight. So the thing is, we have a regime where we grow contractors to make sure that they can handle a certain level of work, and then that is one way of, as you say, playing field.
That is one way, yes, you would have growth in industry, and this is why we need more workshops, etc., for harmonization.
Yes, quite right. I mean, I saw the Contractors Association, they did a workshop recently, and it was well attended, I understand, with respect to small contractors. I see other agencies, state agencies doing workshops, and I applaud that effort. That is a very good effort to ensure that, one, the contractors understand the objectives of the organization and the expectations, and two, to grow them into the training. But at the end of the day, the contractor needs to understand compliance. So you need to have the right organization. And, you know, I've worked with foreign contractors already, and one of the advantages that they have is that they will put a job function per department. And let me explain. So you'll have one person doing material acquisition, one person doing health and safety, and one section doing the actual construction, one doing quality control. I have seen with some contractors in Trinidad, you have one person doing about the job descriptions of 5 or 6 different people. And that obviously leads to error. So what we need to do is ensure that we properly resource our organizations. And in fact, when you tender for work, and I always, this is an observation I always make, a contractor will say, here's what, I have 45 pieces of equipment and 100 employees. That's, but how much of that are you apportioning to the project you are tendering on? Because you are also running up. So obviously those 45 pieces of equipment not available for my project, it might be 3. And therefore that affects your schedule and everything else in the execution of the project. So I think we need to sit back and think about how we tender in, and then how we do the procurement, and how we actually execute the project.
And that is why we need to look at how the industry brings good faith in contractual practices.
Yes, quite right. I think that if the industry works closer with the government and vice versa, then I think it will be a healthy relationship, a harmonious relationship at this end. And I think it will be good for the industry, but I'm not seeing that right now. I think it's one-sided right now, where the industry is advocating that's through me or through Zero or Mr. Outridge or Adesh or whoever. And we're advocating, and it seems to me that no one is listening, or they probably are listening, but they're just ignoring. And what is it? That is not going to be good for the long-term development of our country. If we want to see the long-term development of our country and we want to be sustainable, then we need to discuss these issues openly and succinctly and say these are decisions we're going to take together going forward.
And politicians have a role to play in this as well.
Oh yes, well, you know, in this country, politicians, whether one side or the other, they tend to influence. And my thing on that is this: I called for this. What I'm going to say now, I'm going to call for it. I said in the CCGI seminar that we should have a National Infrastructure Commission. It's similar to the one in the UK, where the commission decides based on criteria, need, urgency, which projects we do now. And it is not at the whim and the fancy of a politician. And for too long, we've had politicians, and I'm saying it on both sides, and we all know the two sides are talking about, who have said, hey, this is what we need to do, but is there any criteria? So the National Infrastructure Commission should be independently appointed, where they serve the interests of the people. Do we need a hospital versus a highway? Do we need river dredging versus a brand new building? Which is more prioritized depending on the urgency and the need? And that is what we need to do. And once we start up with that National Infrastructure Commission, then we move on to everything with tendering, procurement, funding, that kind of thing. But the politicians do influence, they have influence, and quite frankly, I think the country has reached a point where we need to halt on whether politicians doing this because of votes, and look at need. Need is more important for our sustainable development in trying to be.
In all governments, past and present, in their manifestos, they pledge this and pledge that, and then it is not followed through. Let's take a short commercial break, Doc and audience, and when we come back, we will be discussing the importance of feasibility studies and why we are too quick to just jump and deliver. We'll be right back. Hello, join me on Hotline with Ann Dookie every Monday at 1 to 2 p.m. The thing with this coronavirus is we had to push away the ones we love the most. We had to watch our families dwindle. We have seen infection rates rising. People are reluctant to get vaccinated. But wait, this is where the doctors come in. Then we had to face rising food prices every day. Most of you will agree we have been challenged. It's time we make the policies to set the agenda. Join me on Hotline with Ann Dookie, Mondays from 1 to 2 p.m. live on IETV and iRadioTT.com. See you there. Viewers and listeners, welcome back to Hotline with Ann Dookie on IETV and iRadioTT.com. I mentioned before the break the importance of feasibility studies. Why we are so quick to jump and deliver. Dr. Dunn, welcome back. So every 5 years you have new contracts being given out. Of course, politicians have a role to play in this. Is there a clause where if one contractor is used, say by this administration, and a new government comes in, the contractor can continue?
Well, I'm not sure if there's a clause like that. I have never seen a clause like that. I'm not sure what you're referring to.
So many times we have projects started and then they are shelved, and because the new government doesn't have it in their manifesto, yes, the project will be shelved. Why don't we continue it?
Right, that is definitely a business continuity question, and it's an important thing. It may not be in the contract. The clause will not exist in the contract that if a contract is awarded and there's a change of government, that the contract cannot be shelved. However, there are clauses in the contract that talk about termination, right? If you terminate the contract and the contractor has performed some of the work, you need to pay the contractor off for that level of work. But there's also something that refers to termination and loss of earnings. So for example, if you've terminated the contract at, let's say, 40% progress, and there was an expectation that the contractor was intended to gain earnings from the project at 100%, then there could be a lawsuit developing. So what I would say is this: I think there needs to be a national policy similar to the federal government of the United States that says, here's what. If we started a project under a previous regime, when a new regime comes in, don't just shelve the project. There must be some justification or criteria as to why the project was started and what period. Because then listen, we live in a 5-year cycle of politics. Okay? Some of these contracts, they take 1 year to design and another 6 or 7 months to procure. So when you think about it, there's not much time in that cycle. I think what we need to do is stop awarding projects to be completed out of 5th year closer to general elections. We need to award contracts to take its normal time, that is requisite normal time, and execute and complete. And what that does, it reduces your fast tracking. Why are we fast tracking projects? And then it, of course, it invariably leads to errors. So we need to award our contracts, give the appropriate appropriate time for the designer, and for the procurement, and then for the execution.
Is there a clause in a contract, Doc, if I say I short bid for a contract and only to realize, well, I left out this and that, and the job is shelved, is there a clause in contracts that I can put in the additional cost if I short bid on a contract? Many times projects are halted because of this.
Right, you're right. I think that talks about price escalation.
Yes.
So what we see in the industry, and contractors will tell you this, is that since the advent of COVID, and now in the post-COVID period, there are fluctuations in the prices of materials, labor and equipment. And so some of the contracts are quite rigid, and when I mean rigid, I mean that they don't take into account price escalation. Now, in normal contracting, we have a bid validity period, which gives a contractor a certain amount of time they have to hold a price. Some contractors have actually come back and said, here's what, we can't hold our price. And in some cases, I have considered it and I said, okay, you need to justify why you can't hold the price and show us the evidence that your rates increased and so on. And in some cases, we have adjusted the award price. However, there is a formula that exists in the FIDIC type contracts, which uses what they call cost indices to determine the proper price escalation, but it requires data. And we have not generated that kind of data in the country. So the data is needed is simply this. Someone needs to track the prices of goods, material, equipment, and so on in the construction industry and then publish it. And then once it's published, and this is similar to the UK, the UK does this. So you publish it and now you continue to adjust as you go along, and then that is the basis of an argument for the price escalation clause, if in fact is, as the person said, short bid, right? But short bid is a very, it could mean a lot of things. I'm assuming that the person asking the question meant as in not being able to deal with the price escalation once the award comes. Because sometimes the award comes a few months after the bid is settled.
And so prices will change.
Yeah, prices will change. But it's a normal part of the process because it takes, I'll tell you this, it takes time to evaluate bids. You have to put together a proper team, a qualified team, we normally call it a cross-functional team. And then, of course, you have to run through the process. And of course, if you look at the policies and the procedures published by the Office of the Procurement Regulator, they just speak on all of those things, and you need to obviously take a time, evaluate, not take a whole lot of time, but evaluate and make sure the award is robust when you actually do make it. Because sometimes that is the procurement process. It hasn't ramped up totally yet, but there may be that day when persons say, yes, but I don't agree with this evaluation team, and I want to challenge the process. And that's going to lead into a different set of lawsuits, especially as the economy continues to contract and opportunities become less and less.
When companies bid for contracts, should their bids be made public or published?
So I'll tell you this, in the private sector, there's no requirement to make it public. I know in the public sector, which is basically the state agencies and ministries and so on, they will have public opening. In terms of whether there's a requirement for it to be made public, I think we should. I mean, as I said, it's getting to a point where persons need to probably will challenge the process, and they want to know who is the lowest price, highest price. But I think the takeaway shouldn't be, if you know who the lowest price is and you know who the highest price is, we should simply say, okay, let's award it to the lowest price, and if we award it to the lowest price, fine. And then if it is awarded to the highest price, some level of corruption takes place. That shouldn't be the takeaway. The takeaway should be is that when we open the bids publicly, we state the prices, we state who made the submissions, and then we understand the proviso is that there must be a technical evaluation of the bids, and then after that you could consider the final part. So the public must understand that there must be a holistic consideration for the value of money when you look at all the bids.
And speaking about bids, that could cap down on nepotism.
Well, it depends. I'll tell you something about nepotism. You know, I've spoken at length with my colleagues on this. Now, you know, we say in Trinidad Lands, everybody knew everybody.
Yeah.
We live in an island, and I'll tell you something. Anytime I read about nepotism, you have to wonder what is the genesis of it. Now, nepotism is simply this. I am a client, and I have a cousin who is contracting, and that cousin might very well be a good contractor and you submit a bid. What I should do then is that if I'm a client evaluating the bids, I need to declare it. So I should then recuse myself from the process and say, here's what, because I know my cousin submitted a bid, I am taking myself out because I could be very well influenced by that familial relationship. And that is what we need to do, because everybody knows everybody. The same contractors bid all the time, and the same clients are there, and the same, you know, you just change all the pieces. So if you are in a procurement process and you know someone, simply recuse yourself out of the process and say, listen, I'm not going to participate on this one because I have made a declaration that I know this person and therefore I can influence my source to award to this person. And that comes out to personal ethics. So if you're not recusing yourself, well, then there's an ethical violation right there.
Recently, you had a consultation on procurement, Doc. What are some of the main recommendations came out of this consultation that comes to mind?
Right, I think you're referring to the CCGI.
Yes, yes.
Right. Oh, right, so it's pretty much the same thing, and it was well attended, I must say. I thank the CEO of the Caribbean Corporate Governance, that would be Kamala Rampasa de Silva. They did a fantastic job. I'll say this, sir. The same issues we've spoken about today, same issues came out in the, and it was well attended by people from ministries, from state agencies, and they had very important questions to ask. And then I said, we've discussed this over length over the last 10 years in this country. Why are we not moving ahead? The same issues of corruption, nepotism, all that we talked about today with respect to awarding contracts, designer contracts, all those are spoken about. The question is, why is it not being enabled in a more energetic way? And that is what I'm asking government to do. Consider enabling all these expertise that came out of the industry, from the reports, from all the commission of inquiries, from a program like this, which is Hotline, okay, from the CCGI program. Take that learning, enable it, and ensure that the next government, whoever that may be, doesn't have a wiggle room to do anything more corrupt. And that is what we need to do. That is what we need to do.
As I'm seeing a question here from a viewer.
Sure.
Does the Ministry of Works and Transport, or APETT, do they do regular assessment of our nation highways and roads, drainage infrastructure, etc., similar to that in the US, to see what is necessary?
Well, the answer to that question is, I hope they do, because then how do you plan your programming? So I know the Ministry of Works has competent engineers and so on, and let me just divide APET out. APET is an association that represents engineers.
Yes.
Many of their members do work in the ministry, of course. I have not heard them really advocate, but the JCC, which is the umbrella company, do advocate on behalf of them. And I would hope that it is done. Now, one of the things I called for over the last 12 months is to the publication of roads which are fixed, how they were fixed, what are the contract values, what was the scope, and what are the roads to be fixed now. So I know there was in January, the minister was announcing roads that will be done, and I saw roads being repaved and so on. But I'm not very sure where that is now, and the public needs, we are taxing citizens of the public, and we need to know what roads have been paved and what is on the program, because in fact, we are in the middle of the dry season. There's not much dry season left. And I haven't even spoken about the drainage issues yet. Because I know there was some dredging done, and maybe, if you go down the Solomon Road, I will see dredging done, and I'm very pleased that it's being done. But the question is, what about just simple drainage cleaning of box drains and so on in front of your house? Is that being done? Because that is all part of the problem. So I'm not sure what the regional corporations have done. And it may boil down to the very fact that they've had allocations in the budget, but whether these allocations have been converted to releases, we don't exactly know. So that is what the public needs to know. Because how are you going to gain the confidence of the public if you don't tell the public what your plan is for the next several months?
And only harmonization will save money. It will save resources if the municipal corporations get involved together with these bodies and they work together.
Well, I think that might be a small percentage of the problem. I think the municipal corporations, I've heard the
Penal Debe Regional Corporation, yes.
I've been hearing the money's not coming. And I saw an allocation in the budget statements and also the subsequent statements, but I don't know if that has been converted to resources. So one is getting money to do the work. Is the money adequate? If you ask 45 million, you get 10 million. The question is, why? Is it because they didn't trust the estimates? Sometimes estimates are inflated, and that will take our program into another 2 hours just to talk about that. So I think the real thing is that the regional corporations, they do what they can, but they need to be adequately resourced, adequately funded to ensure that they combat the problems. And my fear is coming into the rainy season now as to if flooding is going to impact on us again. And I really hope whatever is being done addresses it, but I'm not sure at this point in time.
I am not seeing throughout the country that much work is being done where flooding is concerned. Yesterday I was all the way down to Point 14, yes, and I'm not seeing any drains being cleaned and so on, which will prevent flooding in that area, as you rightfully said, the Penal Debe.
Exactly.
The Penal Debe area.
Yeah, I mean, someone asked me if I would advocate for persons doing their own cleaning, and I'll say this much, If it is in your interest to do it, you could do it, but now you don't want to set a precedent. You don't want to give the government a precedent that, hey, every year you're going to pay for your own road, you're going to clean your engine, and then you're paying money, you're paying tax for that. And on top of that, just now property tax might come. So that's another consideration. So I think if people want to do it because they're out of frustration, fine. But it should not be a precedent going forward.
Of course. In the last 2 minutes, Doc, let's wrap up and hear your closing statements before we end the program.
Sure. As I said, the off report is of 91 recommendations.
Yes.
A lot of it has been done. We need to advocate that we implement many of these recommendations, if not all. It's going to take time, but I am calling for the appointment of a regulator. I'm calling for that we have a National Infrastructure Commission that determines independently which projects go forward in the best interest of the country and not the best interest of the politicians, right? I mean, yes, they are decision makers. I'm not knocking all the politicians altogether. They'll come after one way or the other. But I'm saying in the best interest of the country, let us have a National Infrastructure Commission that is independently funded, that talks about this, and let us continue to advocate for transparency, accountability, and for integrity in public life among those decision makers.
Dr. Don Samuel, civil engineer, thank you for explaining all of these details to us, Doc, and the impact of the OFF report on the 91 recommendations. Although we did not go through each one of the recommendations, you can pull it up online. And what is the out-of-box approach to growth in the industry? Harmonization is the only way forward and the only way we can grow when we work together. Thank you for joining me. This has been Hotline with Ann Dookie. See you again next week.